direct from historic downtown Orange, California. It's time for the Bob Gurr Show. Please join us as Bob welcomes today's special guest from the girls next door, Bridget Marquardt. And now, here's your host, the man, the myth, the Disney legend, Bob Gurr.
Welcome to the Bob Gurr Show. Today, we welcome the star of E's reality show, The Girls Next Door, and Travel Channel's Bridget's Sexiest Beaches. Now, she's co-host of Girls Next Level podcast. I'm excited to welcome Bridget Marquardt. Well, good morning, Bridget.
Good morning.
We're going to have some fun tales to tell on each other in a way. But first, I'd like to say that looking at what you do and what you've done, you've got some interests that I think is very interesting. A lot of people might not know them. Mixing with many kinds of people, that is a natural for you to be on stage.
Yes.
Aha. Your serious life goal in college, but naturalness might be a success. That was pointed out to you in your early 20s, that you might have an idea, well, I'd like to do this, and somebody would look at you and say, well, I think there's other things you could do, and you jumped at it.
Yes.
Yes, all right. So you decided to try a high visibility career start. I think you couldn't be more visible than you were.
But it didn't start that way.
Yeah, well, it didn't start that way, but it sort of became that.
It did, yes.
Right. But see, those are the changes, the paths that you were able to take advantage of for quite some time.
Yeah, it just takes a while to get there sometimes. Like I started out working in a video store. Do you remember the video stores?
Yeah. Well, that's why it leads to the other thing was you have the patience to endure disappointment. You never get down. It's like, well, it's not working. Well, there's some other stuff we can do.
Yeah.
And that seems to be pretty consistent.
Well, sometimes there's a little bit of downtime. I think you have to let yourself grieve a little bit some of the losses.
Yes.
But then it's all about how you recover from that and move forward.
Perfect. Okay. You never stop trying. If something's not working, you try something else.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Or sometimes I keep trying the same thing again. 'Cause one of the times it's gonna work.
You gotta get that part to work. Here's the interesting. After becoming known and performing, plus writing, this is an interesting thing because sometimes performers are not writers, but all of a sudden you can do creative writing and then go beyond that.
Yeah, well, I have a master's degree in communications, and so there's a lot of writing involved to get to that. Yeah. So I enjoy writing, and I feel like a lot of my job requires a lot of writing.
Well, this is why I was quite intrigued because, let's say, as your career became very visible, I was curious. I said, you really signed up for communications very early in life, which is sort of like, I'm headed for public relations or I'm headed for things, but the communications told me strong extrovert.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's part of me that's an introvert, but most of me is an extrovert.
Okay, all right.
But I think we all have a little bit of both, don't you think? Like there's times where you just kind of want to be at home and not be bothered once in a while.
Yeah, the introvert part where you go home and charge your battery, so to speak. Okay, that's a very, very important thing. I'm the other way around. I'm the introvert that has to come off the hill and extrovert like mad and then go back up on the hill and charge my battery.
Really?
Yeah, that's the difference. Yeah, because you go from a designer in the backwoods, so to speak, and then all of a sudden you're out in public, which is not your forte, and then you go back into your quiet cave.
Yeah.
Lastly, one of the things I think is very, very important, you are comfortable to be in charge of all your activities.
I prefer to be in charge of all my activities.
Okay, well, I detected that and everything that I'd learned about you. And then lastly, it's logical to operate your own business plus write and perform. So we'll get into that a little bit later
Okay.
because you travel around a lot. You do some interesting things, meet a lot of interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get into that a little bit further, a little bit later on.
Okay.
Oh, but the main thing I think people like to know about people that, let's say, people that are famous or successful, there's always a curiosity. Well, how did they manage to do that? People, like a lot of viewers, I can't do anything like that, and she just up and does it. So there's something how, what I would say, the life, the path that you took. Sometimes you don't necessarily take it. It just oozed around and became the path.
Maybe. I feel like there's a lot of pushing for it too. You have to really want something and you can't take no for an answer. And sometimes if the way you were trying to do it doesn't work, you have to try different ways.
Okay. Well, that's the flexibility. That's terribly important. So now I'm really interested in what I would say the how your life got started. And I put it another way. Between 3 years old and 5 years old, a lot of times a child will have a couple of little experiences. They don't connect. They're just a red hot thing here and a red hot thing there, and it kind of puzzles you as you look back once in a while and say, what was that about? What was this about? But those, I call those are the seeds of your nature. And they're little pop-ups. And they endure, but there's something about them that once in a while you think, oh my God, I remember that thing. It was so scary. Or another kid will say, oh man, that was exciting. What was that all about? And those are the little seeds that you have them very solidly, but a lot of people don't go back and take a look. So I'm going to ask you to do that. So I'm trying to look at your first experiences that you had that would establish your general MO or your method of operating. It's sort of like your policy in life, how you do things. Another thing, what was as a curious question, when did you first have a recollection that you're a live human functioning in this world?
Oh my gosh.
And see, those are the little red hot ones that will pop up.
Yeah.
Anything coming to mind there?
I just remember my earliest memories probably living with my mom. She was a single mom. I had a little brother. And at a very, very young age, I was a latchkey kid. My mom had to work. So I would come home. I think I was only like 4 or 5. I would walk home from school and like turn the key try to turn the key. It was almost too hard for me to turn. Sometimes I'd use my teeth to help turn it and let myself in at home, and be home alone until my mom got home. I remember making a big ice cream and with candy in it and watching Scooby-Doo. My favorite thing to do.
See what you just revealed. What age was that about?
Like 4 or 5.
Okay. So what you just said was you already had a streak of being in charge and not being afraid of it.
Right. I had to be in charge and very independent from a very young age.
Do you see how that has played right straight through?
Yes.
Look at that. See, that's a red hot seed, you see.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it probably got modified as you went along with different opportunities for a career. Okay. What are any of the other aspects in that time frame that some people they're interested in music or they're interested in something else, but what you just revealed is a very important part because that's the heart of your operating system right there.
Yeah. Well, I think I was always interested in spooky things. Like I said, I would watch Scooby-Doo. Yeah. I loved scary stories. I loved just all of that kind of stuff. People ask me, when's the first time you remember liking that stuff? I said, I think I was born spooky because I've always liked it. And my brother too.
Well, this is a super connection right here because at that kind of age again, compare that with your business today. It's almost the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. I also would look at some of my dad's magazines and think, oh, I want to be like those girls when I get older. They're so beautiful. And then I love the spooky stuff, and all of it transformed into who I am today.
Oh my gosh. That's hard to believe that all the things that that affected you very early on were all literally in one path, and it was quite comfortable. You didn't have to shift around and do a lot of things that a lot of people wind up with, trying to, like, number one, find yourself, and then find yourself working with the kind of a career and development that you would like to do. You pretty much were on track.
I did. I knew what I wanted, but it wasn't that easy to get there. And there was different things I had to do because where I grew up was a small town. And to think that I was going to do anything in the modeling industry or anything with the paranormal, that was not even something I had in mind because I didn't think that those were things I could do. First of all, paranormal stuff wasn't even a thing you could do until more recently.
Yeah.
And then the modeling thing, I just didn't think that somebody from my small town would make it in modeling. Like, it just didn't think that that would happen. So I went to school, and like I mentioned earlier, I got my bachelor's degree, and then I moved on to get my master's degree because when I got my bachelor's degree, it was in this sports arena. All these people graduating at the same time. And I remember sitting there looking around at all of these people graduating at the same moment as me, going, I'm in competition with every single one of these people right now for a job when I walk out of here. But in the front row was like 25 people that were getting their master's degree. And I said, that's where I need to be.
Ah.
And immediately applied.
Okay, well, this means that you have no fear jumping to another level because you see yourself should be there.
Yeah.
Oh, a lot of people are kind of reluctant. They're not too sure, but you don't have any of those doubts.
No, I want to get my PhD. Dr. Bridget.
Oh, and at what age was that in the graduation?
That would have been like 23, I think I was.
Okay, all right. So then, what steps did you take eventually to leave? Was it up in Ione, up in the Northern Valley?
Lodi.
Up there in Lodi. Okay.
But Ione's not far from there.
Okay, well, yeah, close area. Okay. So yeah, to some people that's kind of an isolated part of America, part of California.
Yes.
And then what got you to make the so-called big step? Okay, we're going to come down to Hollywood.
Yeah, well, it wasn't easy. Like I said, I was working other jobs. I worked at a video store. Then I moved on to, I was a medical assistant for 7 years at a cardiology office. And while I was going to school and working at the doctor's office, I got the opportunity to audition for Playboy. They were doing a casting call in San Francisco, and I went, and I was super excited and really nervous. It's something I'd wanted to do since I saw my dad's magazines at an early age, and this was the only time I didn't know this was before the internet. Like, I couldn't figure out how you just get discovered for that. So this was finally that opportunity for that. And I went to the casting call, and it went really well. And 2 weeks later, I got a phone call at work saying that they want to fly me down to LA and stay at the Playboy Mansion and meet Hef, and they want to do my hair, my makeup, and bring me to the studio and do a whole shoot because they think I have Playmate potential.
Well, this must have been a great surprise shock at that time. You want to make some kind of a leap, and all of a sudden the leap is a gigantic one, pick you up, fly you down,
yes,
and start at that level.
And I was so excited. I was walking on clouds. And after I did the whole photo shoot, I mean, I wouldn't stop talking about it. Everybody that would listen, I told the story to. And I waited to hear back, and I waited, and I waited, and a year went by, and I didn't hear back. And I would call, and they said, no news is good news. That means you're still in the running.
Right.
Then a year and a half goes by, and I get a letter saying I didn't get it.
Oh.
And I was devastated.
How long did it take you to undevastate yourself at that point?
It took a few months before I decided, you know what? I need to move to LA and really give this my full shot, because I was so brokenhearted over it that I felt like if I moved to LA, and I could push harder from there. Okay,
so you finally made the decision, okay, you will leave the upper San Joaquin Valley and come down to a terribly competitive place.
Yes.
And decide to dive right in.
Yes.
Because you already knew you had been invited for a tryout.
Yes.
They already knew that you had an appearance attributes that were going to be attractive to people. And now it's just almost like, well, you want to just come down here and just market yourself just like that. Is that kind of the attitude you
Yeah,
had?
I had already kind of gotten an agent. I already knew some people. I was invited to come up to the mansion still for dinner, buffet dinners and movies and what they call Fun in the Sun every Sunday. So I kind of had a foot in the door. But I wasn't just solely focused on Playboy. I thought if I'm going to move to LA, I'm going to try my hand at, I was in a few soap operas. I was in a couple of movies just as like an extra or whatever, but it was making money and I was working and they were big movies and big soap operas, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, you know, sometimes you read a lot of stories about people, they suffer too much of their own internal disappointment when they don't get these little starter jobs, let's say. But somehow this was something became normal to you. I try for this and I try for that, and because there's always going to be pieces of things you could just jump in and do.
Yeah.
But without a real disappointment of being turned down once or twice or something, you already, by that time, did you already see that there's a lot of different opportunities?
I did. I saw, and I had been doing spokes modeling too, so I did a little bit of that when I moved to LA. Anything to pay the bills and to keep me here.
Oh,
I
my
did not
gosh.
want to leave. I never wanted to go back to Northern California again. I mean, to visit my family, but not to live.
Oh, okay, so you became a very thorough Southern Californian right off.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that it's important to note too that in the entertainment industry, it's all about denial and told no all the time. You're told no way more times than you're ever told yes. And you just have to like get out the next day and go try again.
Okay. I think just from, you know, a reader looking in at, say, the whole era of the Playboy Mansion, various stories, but it seemed like it was a very competitive place.
Yes.
How did you deal with the competitiveness? Because obviously, if you have, you know, a variable group of people of all kinds, some might not get along, others would get along very well, and where some people might be disappointed and take it too hard, too personally.
Yeah.
How did you deal with it?
There's definitely a lot of that, and I can't control the way other people are acting, and there was definitely a lot of people who were acting out, whether it's because they were competitive or not getting the opportunities they wanted or all kinds of things, but I also made some great friendships. But as for me and competitiveness, I'm not a super competitive person. I don't necessarily look at everybody as my competition. I mean, I know I said when I was graduating that I looked around and said all of these people are joining the job market at the same time, but I don't feel like competitive against each and every person. I feel like I bring my own thing to the table, and it's either what people are looking for or it's not.
This goes right back to the latchkey days, where yes, at 4 years old, you could be in charge and have rational thought applied to something that might be very emotional. And now you're telling me that at the Playboy Mansion and that competitive thing, you didn't see that as a personal competition.
Well, I mean, it's hard not to take it as a personal thing because we all are living together in, I know it's a mansion, but it's still pretty small with all those girls living together and everybody's wanting to get Playmate and to get those things out of it. So it's hard not to take some of the stuff personally, but I'm not competitive in nature. Like I don't look at people and be like, oh, I need to look better than her or I need to be better. You know, I don't do that kind of cattiness. I would rather be friends with everybody and we work on it together. I think that's the Libra in me.
Oh,
I like to work on things together. Even though I'm very independent and I like to be in control, I also like to do group things.
That Bridget, that is a very, very well-grounded position or operating or what I call an MO. That appears to be a very stable and very balanced with very, very good grounding. So that I'm guessing then that you periods of time where you might have been very disappointed, you had enough wisdom not to be too disappointed because there's always going to be other stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a discomfort that will gradually pass. At what point did you follow up your enjoyment of spookiness? And tell me how your interest in the natural became quite serious.
Yeah. Well, it started at a very young age. Like I said, I think I was born spooky. I always liked stuff. But my first big experience happened when I was 12 years old and I was playing the Ouija. I bought a Ouija board. I saved up my babysitting money. I bought a Ouija board. I brought my cousin over. We're playing the Ouija board and the planchette is moving. And
yeah.
I didn't really know that many people. I was 12, so I didn't really know that many people who had passed away. So the only person I knew of was my great-grandfather. He had just died not that long before. So we're trying to talk to him. And supposedly we're talking to him. It's moving and it's answering our questions. But I accused my cousin of moving it. She accused me of moving it. And then we got bored and put it away. But then later, I started having weird experiences after that. I started having nightmares about him. I started feeling like this sense of being watched. I just started having like a lot of really weird stuff going on. And one day I came home from school alone again, and I was sitting at the coffee table watching TV, doing homework, whatever I was doing, and I heard the back door fly open. So, and I came in through the back door, so I thought, oh, I must not have closed it tight. So I get up and I go into the laundry room and I shut the back door. I don't think anything of it. I go back in, sit at the coffee table again, and I hear it fly open again. And it flies open so hard, it like hits the side of the house kind of thing. And I thought, oh, that's really weird. There must be something wrong with like it's not latching or something. So I get up, I walk out there again. I kind of look out there. Is anybody here? Nobody's there. Check the door. It seems to be tight. Like doesn't seem to be just flying open on its own. I thought that's really weird. So now I'm thinking it's weird, but I'm not scared or anything. I go back to the living room and I hear it open again. And this time I'm scared because something's going on now. Somebody's like messing with me or something. And we live way out in the country in the middle of nowhere. There's like, I can barely see the next neighbor's house.
That makes it even spookier.
Yeah. So I'm nervous about walking into the laundry room. I walk in there. I don't see anything. The door's wide open. I go out onto the back porch. I look around. I don't see anyone. So I grabbed the door and I shut it and I locked it really quick. And then I turned around, and as I was walking down the hall, I saw my great-grandfather standing at the end of the hall.
Ooh.
And it was just out of the corner of my eye. And when I like gasped and turned to look, it was gone. But I definitely, at least in my mind, felt I saw him standing there. And that experience made me want to experience the paranormal even more and learn more about it. And so I started staying in haunted places and like walking around at midnight with a camera, trying to like experience something or see anything. And then this elevated into like buying the tools to go and do investigations, and then eventually, finally, starting my own podcast about it.
That is a fascinating story, going all the way back to the seeds, coming up and having spooky experience, Ouija board, all that. I'm curious now, what could you share with us about the idea that, in a way, paranormal is, some people believe it right off the bat, real easy, and other people say, nah, nothing like that can ever happen. So there's a big range.
Yes.
I've had only a couple experiences where, you know, the table tipping, few little things, the Ouija board, but I was never very concerned with it. But as time goes on, if you mix in the way some people treat magic, particularly where a person could influence the choice another person makes, in those a few instances, do you think there is some kind of connection that we just label paranormal that somehow can influence a person to let's say, imagine might be the wrong word, but to experience something in their head based upon some knowledge they already have, that momentarily they construct something?
I think it's possible. Yeah, I definitely think it's possible. But I also think that there's too many things that happen that are unexplained that multiple people experience at the same time, and we can't explain them. So I definitely think there's something else going on out there too.
Can you be a little bit more detailed about what might be going on? For example, I'll just suggest that, for example, let's say your eye sees something, but no, it doesn't. It sends a little signal. It goes to the brain. The brain then processes and displays something in your mind of what the eye signal sent to you. But some people say it's entirely possible that that same process in the brain can dip into a lot of experiences and pull a bunch of stuff up and say, oh, I'm going to make up a picture and show it to you, and it'll scare you with it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's possible, that kind of an activity?
I think that that's entirely possible. But for instance, one night I was sitting at the Playboy Mansion in my bedroom. My sister was next to me on the bed. My friend Stacy was sitting on the floor. We're all chatting about this trip we had just taken. I had a brand new puppy. I just got her that day. She was on the floor in like a little cage right next to us, asleep. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, all three of us saw a woman standing in my doorway of my closet. And I gasped, but I was excited. I was like, oh, what was that? My friend Stacy covered her eyes because she's a big scaredy cat and was like, what was that? I don't even think I want to know. What was that? What was that? What was that? And my sister just started crying. Everybody reacted in a different way, but all three of us saw it.
That's the weird part, because I've read of the experiences like that, and let's say I kind of don't fall for a lot of things, let's say, but that blew my argument away, because I could understand what one person would do, but when you have other people seeing or experiencing the same sort of thing, now it makes me have big questions. What more could you explain to me that might explain these experiences?
I wish I had the answers.
Oh, but you're exploring it anyway.
Yes. I mean, we all want the answers. It's just interesting to try different forms of communication with the other side. We have things called spirit boxes, and even just a voice recorder, like asking questions and listening back to see if anything responded, because sometimes you don't hear it with your regular ear, but you'll hear it back after.
This is almost like if humans were more than just an independent operating mechanism, a mammal, so to speak, and a hominid. It's almost like, is there another connection that we don't quite grasp that is somehow universal?
Yeah.
Which I think leads to the fact that there's always stories of a person that has what we call it, a typical near-death thing.
Yes.
Somebody almost drowned and comes back. They usually have a lot of visages that they want to really talk about, which meant that must have been some very solid input. Is it in their head, or did it touch a little bit from something else?
Yeah, well, I've done a couple shows about near-death experiences, and I've had one of the leading researchers on the show about it. And these people share such similar experiences. Like, it's not like one person has one experience and another person has a different experience. It's very, very similar for all these people. And so many people have had them. They talk about the tunnel. They talk about doing the life reflection. They talk about the family members and people and even pets that they've met afterwards. They've talked about being in the room while they're dying, but being able to see it. And to the point of being able to say what the doctor said and the instruments they used that they couldn't have possibly known.
Oh my gosh. When my grandmother was very ill, age 84, she came from a family of 6 siblings, boys and girls. She was the youngest, so most of them were gone by that time. And my mother was with her in her own home. She was in a hospital, and then one day she says, "No, I don't like this hospital. It's not a good hotel anyway. Take me home." So she stayed at home for about another 2 weeks, and my mother watched her, and was just slowly going away. And then my mother said suddenly one afternoon she was wide awake, and she was calling all her siblings that were gone, except May, who was a little bit younger. And my mother was totally startled, because she said she was like, oh, they're in a family reunion. They're all talking to one another. And in the middle of that thing, she just got very quiet and she was gone.
Yeah.
It was,
that gives me chills.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
because I knew my grandmother very well. She was very well grounded. She was an artist, very solid, you know, quite religious person, and very conservative, which would belie the fact that she was having this great experience that was not what we knew her for.
Yeah.
And it was in the last few minutes.
And it's very common. I had a hospice nurse on my show not that long ago, and she was talking about end-of-life experiences and what happens to people. And there's so many of them that get visitations from their relatives and are talking to them, are reaching for them, are saying, don't you see, like, so-and-so is sitting in the chair right there? And they're like, no, I don't see it. But they said sometimes animals in the room will also notice things.
Really? Because, yeah, I just now remembered my mother said that Grandma wasn't very able to move at all. He just laid there. But she said at that moment her eyes were wide open and she was gesturing to people to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. You're starting to scare me.
Oh, no. Well, don't you think that's wonderful? Like if you're in that position and you're in your last moments, that people that you love are there to help guide you over, that they're there with you. Like, I feel like that's not scary, but super exciting and welcoming.
Yeah, the only personal experience that I could say is something I call karma. The simplest things, like the classic one, oh, I got to find a parking spot. And you never could find one. And I've had friends with me for years and years, even in other countries. In a moment, I'll just suddenly, is one right in front of me. Happens all the time. And they say, Bob, how do you do this? You do this all the time. You go to walk someplace and you walk right straight to it and you've never been to it. And I don't know. It's like design. I did a little video some years ago of trying to explain about the philosophy of design, the way I design things, like this monorail up here. And it got down to the point of, well, how do you know what shapes to make, how to design? Because mechanical stuff is a lot of complexity, which means there's a lot of choices. But somehow I watch other designers plod along experimentally in revisions. Somehow I pick up the pencil and it's like, oh, this is what we're going to do. And I go straight to it, which means all the decision making, I see other people suffer. I don't suffer that. And the last thing I could say was, well, it's because I just see it.
Yeah.
There's something just suddenly shows up, it's in your mind, you know, because I can see it in 3D, grab my pencil and draw.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
I'm used to it. But I can't explain it. But when I try to explain it, I just don't get anywhere. What?
It's almost like a paranormal download.
Yeah, I've never heard that expression. Oh my God. I'm kind of wondering, what do I do to keep this rolling?
I know. Well,
yeah.
I mean, if you want to stay on the paranormal side of it, I mean, people say they have spirit guides out there that are watching over us all the time, or guardian angels, or whatever you want to call them, and that we can confer with them about what we're doing and the direction we should be going, and they give us ideas and they show us direction if we're listening. So maybe you're really in touch with yours and you're really listening.
Kind of makes me nervous.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting.
Yeah. Okay, now, what got you started? You're on Patreon.
Yes.
Yeah. How many years ago was that?
Oh, we just started it.
Oh, just started.
Yeah.
Okay. But you've been interested in doing this and then being on Patreon with it. So what got you started in going out, let's say, on location and going to haunted places, meeting people, try to get the stories, and then write and direct and act out little stories in actual locations? Tell me about how that got started.
Well, it's something I love doing. That's more of a passion project for me. Like, I just really enjoy going to the haunted locations. I want to learn the history. I want to meet the people that are there every day. I want to hear the stories of things they've experienced. And then I want to walk around and experience it myself. And maybe do an investigation, but the investigation is sort of the least important part of it to me. I really just want to feel it and experience it for myself.
Oh, 'cause this means you're wide open to a fresh experience without a preconceived notion of wanting to go find something specific.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I feel like if I have this desire to learn more about a location, and what's been happening there and its history that other people do too. So that's what started my podcast about it, about all these different paranormal things. And then because we were starting to do video and that kind of thing, then that's where the Patreon comes in, because where else are you going to put all of these things? You have a couple of choices, you know, YouTube, Patreon. So you have to figure out what's right for you and for the people that you think are interested in this kind of thing.
Well, in addition to the paranormal videos, let's say, do you do other videos with other people, other subjects?
I have in the past. I've done, I did a show called Animal Nation. It's all about pets and animals. Like, it was so cool. We went all over the US and doing these different pet stories that were incredible. From like sled dogs, like mushing, to herding dogs. We went to chimpanzee rescues. I helped put a manatee back into the water. Like, we just did so many cool things on that show. So yeah, I definitely do videos of all kinds of different things.
What do you see from this point on, or the next thing that you would really like to try or continue to explore more in more detail, the things you've been doing?
I would like to do more of what I've been doing, but on another level. I really enjoy getting out and exploring and finding the story in things, the history and the story in things. I don't care if it's a milkshake in some small town. I want to know like how, and it's so popular. I want to know how it came to be, who invented it, why does everybody love it so much? And then I want to experience it too. So I love all of those things, and I've always wanted to show, whether I do it myself or it's an actual show that goes around and just explores.
Okay, so with this exploring, you just said a couple of key words there. Rather than just go, look, experience, and that's that, you'd like to know the reasons for things, the background for things, the little the seeds of the stuff you're discovering. How did this happen? Why did this happen? And work it up to what exists now. It's got to have had some path that made some kind of sense, or maybe it was random or something. Do you find that interesting?
I do. I love hearing the origin stories of things like, how did this happen and how did it become so popular? And then, of course, getting to experience it myself.
Yeah, that's in parallel. I didn't do very good in school, in high school. You know, the usual subject like history. You know, obviously failed at early mathematics. But in later life, I am incredibly curious about how civilizations originated. And I've been reading a lot of books going back like 22,000 years, which to me is like, this is absurd. I'm sitting here right now. I don't need to know how the humans developed civilizations, but it's so interesting to know and track these paths all the way up to why civilizations are the way they are now. This is.
Well, you know, I feel like school is hard, especially elementary school, and learning history. Like, I remember being so bored and like just having to memorize all these dates and names and not really understanding or caring that much, and all these wars and things like that, that like a fourth grader or fifth grader just doesn't even comprehend or care about. But now, like going to places like Gettysburg, or I just was at Valley Forge, and like experiencing history and being there and hearing the stories is totally different.
When you went to Gettysburg, I was there. That was probably about the most emotional thing you could do in 2 days, to see the magnitude of a piece of history in the bits and pieces, in the exact places with the remains of stuff. What was your experience in Gettysburg?
It's definitely overwhelming, and it's hard to comprehend like what happened there, and to really truly, even though you're hearing it and you're seeing the facts, it's hard to understand what that looked like, what that felt like, how scared people must have been, how horrible things, just the conditions and everything must have looked. You know, it's hard to like comprehend all of that.
Some of the last questions I'd like to ask you, can you talk a little bit more about the different things you might see you doing over the coming years?
Well, right now I'm doing a podcast with my friend Holly. We're rehashing our show that we used to do called Girls Next Doors, but now we're doing it called Girls Next Level. We're going back and looking at each episode and breaking it down, and we're really loving that. And we see that moving on to other things after we're done breaking down, because we have such a good rapport and we enjoy doing it. So we think that that can move on to something else. And then I love doing my paranormal podcast. So I definitely want to keep pushing with that and use it as a tool to go and explore more places.
Okay, well, this means you're in a position here that, let's say, it's almost like mid-career, let's say, that you could literally do this forever and continue to explore and learn more and more and more stuff.
Yeah, but I'm also interested in, like, I love costumes and theming. I want to do costume lines and swimwear lines, and I have an idea for luggage lines. Like, I have all these ideas for products and stuff too, and I'm like, I want to do all these things.
Yeah, like you want to be a Loungefly
Yes.
designer.
Okay, yeah, maybe.
Well, look what you designed and what you came in. You came in here, and look, you kind of cheated. Yeah, I know what size the Disneyland badges are supposed to be. Yours is about 50% bigger.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because I thought we traced them out perfectly.
No, that is really pretty good. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to make sure everyone could see my name loud and clear.
Yeah. No, this fit everything, because you're kind of haunted mansion based in one of your basic interests, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me why that is.
I mean, like I said before, I think just because I've always had an interest in it. And that first experience, it just gave me that interest for the rest of my life. Like, I want to know more. And my cousin that played the Ouija board with me, she went the opposite way. She doesn't want anything to do with she turned super religious. Oh, yeah. She felt like there was a demon involved. She went the opposite direction. And she doesn't want anything to do with the paranormal now. Nothing. Like, I took her to the Winchester house, which is probably haunted, but it's very nice things going on there. She did not even want to be left alone or stick around for anything in there. Just the tour and out.
Yeah, well, I can appreciate that, because the vibrations in that house, I've been there a couple of times. You go up in the older spooky parts that aren't finished yet. What was Mrs. Winchester thinking? It's almost like she must have had a demon that just chased the daylights out of her. and that left the stage for saying, that's got to be a guaranteed haunted house.
Yeah.
Did you find that?
You know, I do think that there's something going on there, but I don't find it incredibly haunted. I feel like I had an experience there, though. I was filming something. We were there alone in the middle of the night, and we were filming this little skit. It was Sarah's, the 100-year anniversary of her death. And we were doing this thing where I'm walking in, and as I walk through the door, I kind of turn into like a Victorian in mourning type look. So I'm walking modern day Bridget, but as I step through the threshold, I'm in like this mourning outfit from the Victorian era. And as you know, with filming, you have to do it several times. Like, I walked in and they need to get it from this angle and from that angle and do it one more time. And this time step to the left and step to the right, a million times. And one of the gags that we were doing, when I walked through the door and I noticed that I'm in this weird outfit, all of a sudden the door slams behind me, and we had a producer that was there pulling it. So that was happening over and over again. And so I went to go walk out, and I grabbed the door to go back outside to do it again. And I pulled the door open, and it pulled out of my hand and shut, just like a little bit, like an inch or two. And I just thought the producer, who was in charge of shutting the door, was on the other side and didn't know I was pulling it. So I open up the door, and there's nobody there. And he's around the corner hiding from the camera. And I said, did you just pull the door? And he's like, no, I've been over here. I was like, something just pulled the door right out of my hand.
Ooh,
yeah. And then there were other times where I had to go way down a hall where I could barely see like the camera and the crew and stuff. And I'm standing down like a spooky hallway all by myself, dressed like that, with like the veil over my head and all that kind of stuff. And it just felt like there were eyes like right next to me, like something was right next to me.
This is sounds like it. Almost sounds like the way you're out looking for stories and doing videos. It's almost like you're creating a trail of paranormal following you.
Maybe.
And yeah, instead of discovering it, no, you're leading it.
Bob, should we tell everybody what we did last night?
Oh my gosh. Well, tell us first, where were we?
Okay, so we stayed at the Ghostly Retreat, Airbnb in Fullerton, California. It is totally decorated like the Haunted Mansion. It's amazing.
I know when I walked in there before you got to come over there, I walked in. I'd never seen any photos of it, but I was blown away by the thoroughness because it was very underlit. You know, you come in the afternoon with my glasses, the sunlight, and I walk in, and it's a slow reveal as I walked in. Found out later you step on a carpet, and depending on what switch you stepped on the secret carpet, you got a show on a screen that showed up.
Yeah.
Usually to do with terrified brides with terrible histories. And I think one host ghost was in there. As you walk around through the living room, you remember it had the pictures that change? You like the ship that, and the lady that turned into the cat and all that.
Yes.
That was all real.
I loved it. It was so amazing. And the stretching room.
Oh, the stretching room was out in the garage. You stepped down into the dressing. But what was the room that had the bride, the cake, and the wedding cake, all that?
Yeah, you walked past that to get to the stretching room.
Yeah, that was a spooky thing. And the way all the lighting, and everything is subdued. It's modern. There's spider webs and stuff, but not overly done. So this is like a modern haunted mansion because it does have to function. People can stay at night, a couple of nights. And then you go to the stretching room, and everybody knows that. But you see the pictures. Are they going to stretch or not?
Right.
We got this octagon table in the middle of all that, and everything's octagon shape.
So what are we going to do on the table? We have a couple of choices. A seance or play Clue.
Oh, you brought a box of Clue.
Yes,
okay.
but not just any Clue. Haunted Mansion Clue.
Haunted Mansion. Yeah, because I looked at the board and the graphics were beautifully, almost too much detail for me to try to absorb what's going on. As we went around the table, everybody was doing really good, and I'm the one that's completely dead in the water, and you had to explain each move, each decision, and sometimes stuff's supposed to be secret. I actually blew the secret stuff, and I managed to blow everything until I finished in last place.
I said, shh, don't tell. Don't tell anybody what's in your card.
That was a great experience because, well, I'd have to say, people always say, Bob, you do all these designs and stuff, and then we find out all the things that ordinary people do so easy, you can't do any of them. I can't type. No short-term memory, and that's why when I was younger I was a favorite of poker games because you have to have a guaranteed loser, and I was the guaranteed loser. They made a game like a winner-loser stuff, and sometimes my comprehension of things it's a little too slow.
Oh.
And I looked around at you ladies, and it was like, oh, Bob's having a terrible time. And I was just trying to be a good sport, but every moment I got more and more embarrassed of the simple things I can't do. And trying to play a board game was the worst situation you put me into. But anyway, I survived it.
You survived it, and I taught you how to play Clue, and you taught me all about the dune buggy.
Oh, that's right. You had a little dune buggy in your hand.
Yes.
And you asked a question. Well, tell me about how the dune buggy came about. Remember, I warned you, some stories of mechanical design are quite complex. Would it be okay to take 15 minutes to explain it? You said yes. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Because the dune buggy did not start with the haunted mansion like everybody thinks. Started with the voyage through inner space.
Right.
So I got to explain that, but how did that show up? Well, that showed up because of something left over from the New York World's Fair, of learning how one show worked that had some advantages, and then a casual conversation with John Hench at Wet Enterprises that took another step to say, oh, you could have a vehicle on a track and the vehicle moves, but then you put the seat separate and the seat can then move and turn in all directions, which leaves an art director the ability to have a machine that the guests would ride in. He can point them to where he would like to have the viewpoint go.
Yes.
Which was quite a jump. So the end result was the Haunted Mansion was 2 years behind the Voyage to Inner Space. So the designers of that show said, oh, there's our answer, because it was going to be a walkthrough, which has a lot of impediments trying to do that. So you got the full story of how the Dune Buggy. Oh, and the last part, we compared the name Dune Buggy, as in sand dune, and Doom, as in dead people.
Yes.
An unknown person just arbitrarily gave the Omnimover car, which is just a plain ride vehicle. It was generic. It is now a participating character.
Absolutely.
In the Haunted Mansion, which gives you the voyage. Okay. You're going to tell everybody about it, that contrary to what some people think, Haunted Mansion, you can tell the true story.
I know. Just ask me about it.
All right, okay. So overall, what did you think of the whole this mansion that was like a living rentable one?
The Ghostly Retreat was amazing. I thought the rooms were decorated so cool. Everything. I just thought every detail was taken care of.
What did you think of those spectacular bedrooms, the way they were decorated? One of the rooms looked like it had 20 pillows.
Oh, that's the room I stayed in.
Oh, you picked. Oh, yeah, that's the one that had a big carved post on the bed.
Yeah.
And all the. To sleep in that, you had to put about 100 cushions on the floor.
Well, it was a big bed, so I just kind of pushed the pillows over and made a little spot for myself.
Okay. Well, one of these days, maybe you'll have to go back there, and maybe there's you can make up a story about what paranormal is really like and how it affects people that attempt to rent a haunted mansion for themselves.
Yeah, and think about the cool story that I have. I can say that we spent the night, we had a slumber party with Bob Gurr in the Haunted Mansion house.
Well, then I get equal bragging rights that I slept in the same house with some of my favorite playmates.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I thank you very much for coming by here, especially honoring the Haunted Mansion. Yes. Which I only have a mechanical connection to Haunted Mansion with the Dune Buggies, but dressed absolutely perfect, and here in our cute little 1955 studio.
Yes.
So would you come back on another day with a story, especially if you have an experience that you can say, oh, let me tell you, Bob, we were in a weird place. I got a terrible story to tell you.
Absolutely. Maybe we can talk about Disneyland ghost stories.
Oh, well, we could talk about some of the things I know that were kind of spooky at Disneyland.
Ooh, that would be fun.
You want to do that someday?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you're so cool here this morning. Thank you very,
You're welcome.
very much. Okay, there we are.